most important things that you have to do with a piece of software is you have to designate where things are going to be saved. All right, where are the files going to go? Anybody ever use Adobe products? Adobe products? Okay, Adobe has to be one of the most challenging of all of them because where your stuff goes is actually in multiple folders on multiple levels. So like a lot of your user presets and things like that go into different places. So locating all of your files and rounding them up so you can put them on a hard drive so that you could go, to New York with them and load them up on somebody else's system and have no issues whatsoever is a little bit laborsome. In Pro Tools, they actually make it very plain and simple, and it's all right there in front of you. You just have to know where to access it on the first initial startup. So you always need to know where you're saving it, where your file's going. Two, you also need to know what devices you're telling your system to use. The beauty of your system is that it's customizable, but the downside to your system is that it's customizable, which means it's both a pro and a con. It just means that every time you have to confirm that all of your customized things that you're trying to attach to Pro Tools are actively in use. Cool part is if you do it early at the beginning of the session, you don't have to mess with it ever again. So that's like one of the biggest things. If you do it on the startup, it's easy, it's done, it's simple. If you try to do it after you start up, then it's a huge pain and you're trying to work around what you've already done. And a lot of times you have to kind of go and take a few steps back to get back to where you need to be to set it up correctly. So this is the appropriate startup sequence, okay? So first things first, we're going to go ahead and fire up Pro Tools. Now, of course, that would be the most easy and logical thing. It's this little icon down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see this. This little guy says Pro Tools. How many non-Mac users? Anybody, this is your first time using an Apple computer? Okay. I will say this. I will track heavily with you because obviously if you haven't had experience with it, it can be a little bit confusing at first. So let me just take one pause before we do this and just say your Finder bar, I don't prefer it to be at the bottom because it gets in the way of Pro Tools activity, so I usually use it on the left. In this instance, in most cases, by default, it is at the bottom. But you can use, or I should say, you can relocate this. This is just a shortcut. This is not all of your software or all of your applications. So in order to see all of them, essentially the way that you would see a media browser, we use the Finder on the Mac. Okay. Now a simple shortcut. Sorry, I'm going to jump into this just for a second. Please write this down. Command N. Okay. Command N. And if you're wondering what is Command, it's a little squiggly looking guy on your keyboard. It kind of almost looks like a four-leaf clover, but it says Command. It's right beside the space bar. See it there? Command and the letter N. All right. Command and the letter N in almost all applications on a Mac means new something. If you're in Photoshop, it means new project. If you're in Dreamweaver, it means new palette. If you're in Pro Tools, essentially it means new session. If you're in the Finder, and this is what most people, because like when you open up this application, it literally looks like this. Actually, here, I'll do it this way. Yep. I don't know if I have an extra window. Oh, I don't. Let me add a window here so you can see it. Typically, when you open up your Apple computer, it looks like this. Not much to see, right? So what we typically need to do is navigate to the Finder. In our Finder, if we navigate to our Finder, sorry, this will just help you and it might help me not be so irritated with the process. If you click on the Finder and you see nothing, and the big thing to keep track of is what software you're in is always listed here. So notice it says Finder. If I go here, I'm in Word because this is a Word file. But when you jump between these, you got to keep an eye on what's listed up here. If I'm in Finder and I hit Command N, I get a new window. And in that new window, I can search things, I can save things, I can copy things, I can paste things. Notice there's a bunch of tabs listed on the left, and this is where you see your documents, things that show up on your desktop, and probably most importantly, your applications. All of the important ones we already dropped down here in your toolbar for you. Okay, so they're easy. The other thing that's a huge, and you can ask if you have questions, if you didn't know this, if you were unsure, write this down. Many of you already know this. Okay, Control plus click. All right, your typical left click equals right click. Okay, Control plus click equals right click. If you're not familiar with that, a lot of people get lost and they're like, "Where's my right click? Why don't I have it?" Notice if you look at your mouse, you should have the standard singular. There's no two buttons on the top, right? If you look at your mouse, all right. So Control plus click is your right click. So if you hold control, there's a lot of other stuff that they hide from you. I think one of the interesting things about it, especially in the newer systems, you guys are probably familiar with using apps. Apps are kind of like the dumbed down version of the desktop stuff that we see, but in a lot of the newer systems, they've taken away all of the menus, and instead everything is right clickable. And that's kind of the new future. So like when the new versions of Pro Tools come out, they are introducing more and more right-click options that don't exist in the menu systems. Which means, and the goal is to simplify what you see and kind of hide some of the stuff that you might not necessarily want. The downside is if you didn't know how to right-click or where to right-click, you might be kind of out of the loop on what might be available.